Hello people, welcome back to my channel Fitness Geek. Today we are working on creating virtual environments in Python. So why do we need virtual environments? So for example, you want to create a project and you're working on that project, but all the requirements, all the libraries that you need, pandas, numpy and different other libraries, for example, if you need to install a particular version of it, then you don't want to mess with the root setup that you have, like the system setup. So what you can do is you can create virtual environments, and they are isolated, independent environments where you can install a particular version of library or the particular libraries that you need. You don't need to install it on your complete system. So if you see the documentation, so I'm using Python 3.9. In Python 2 there was something called virtual env, and for newer versions there is something called venv, which comes pre-installed when you install your Python, so you don't have to install it again. So if you see here, ven is for Python 3 and virtual env was for Python 2. So if you see my Python environment, my Python version, I have 3.9.5. so I don't need to install anything. I can just utilize my venv that comes pre-installed. So if you see, it says if you're using 3.3 or newer, the module are preferred. So venv is included in the Python standard library and requires no additional installation. So we are good to go. We are going to create a virtual environment. We'll install a specific library and then we'll run an app. So we'll go to my demo folder, copy my location, fire up my CMD, and then I'll do a CD, and I'm just changing my current directory. That's done. Now after we have changed the current directory, we would need to create the virtual environment. You can give any name that you want. If you go through the documentation, you will see both the ways to install, to create the virtual environment, the older way of using the virtual env and the new ones where we use venv. I call it venv. I'm not sure what would you prefer, but yeah, you can just use venv. So this is the complete documentation, and we are just doing bits and pieces from this. We'll create the virtual environment and install a library. So let's create our virtual environment. Python m venv. I'll call my virtual environment as my demo venv. It takes a couple of seconds, and yep, there you go. So it has created. So if you go to your root folder, you will see a folder named my demo venv, which is the name that I gave to my virtual environment. It has got 3 folders called include, lib and scripts, and there is this config file. If you open this config file, pyvenv, you can open it in Notepad. It is pointing to our Python installation location. And that's our Python version. So that's your config file that a virtual environment creates. If you go into the scripts folder, you will see these files. There is an activate file and there's a deactivate file. These are all Windows batch. There is a partial file as well. So if you are using partial, you can call that ps1 file to create your virtual environment. So we are using our CMD, so we'll call the Windows batch file. Alright, so now it's time to activate our virtual environment. So we'll go to that location, that is the scripts folder, and inside the scripts folder we have got the Windows batch file called activate. That's it. So if you see at the beginning, you will see the virtual environment name within brackets. That means you are currently inside your virtual environment and it is in activated state. So there is a file called app that I have created. This is a very basic Python app. What it does is it is just there's a URL I have mentioned, and I'm just fetching the response from it. So I'm gonna install this requests library, but I mean I don't have that currently. So if you see my application, it tries to import this library, request library, but since we don't have anything installed, I mean any libraries other than the default ones installed, it should throw an error. What this code is doing is it's just going to that URL, and whatever response it gets, it is just printing that. So the status code. So if that URL is alive, I should get a response 200. Okay, and I can type anything random here so that you get a message. So successfully got a response. So this is a very basic app to test this setup. So I'll just save it and close this. Now let me run this application. So how to run it? Just type Python and then call that file app.py, and here we get an error. It says no module named requests, because we have nothing installed here other than the default libraries. So we will need to install requests. How do we do it? And do we need a particular version? Let's just try to install a particular version so that we can cross check that our virtual environment setup is working as expected. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna install the requests version that we got from the documentation. So how to do that? We can just use our package installer called pip. So let's do that. So the command would look something like this: pip install requests, and I can just copy the version. This is just to specify a version. You give the library name and then equal to the version that you want, and just press enter. Installing and collecting, installing, installation done. So here we go, we have got the requests library installed for this virtual environment, and now we would like to run the same application again, and we should not get the error that we received earlier. So here we go, we got 200. Okay, successfully got a response. So our virtual environment setup is working as expected. So we have created the virtual environment, we have done a installation, and then we were able to run our application. Now what we need to do is look into the requirements file, how you can freeze your requirements so that you don't have to face issues when you try to create same project somewhere else. So you can just freeze all the requirements. And how you do that is you use the pip. See, this is called freezing dependencies. So that's a way how you create your requirements file. So let's just freeze the requirements or dependencies. How we do that is Python M. You can just type pip freeze, but yeah, so you can do pip freeze and you should get the list of libraries that exist in this particular virtual environment. And if you see, we installed that particular version of requests, and we can see that in the dependent libraries for this virtual environment. So see, we have not created the requirements file. To create the requirements file, what you have to do is you have to use this command pip freeze greater than and then the requirements.txt. Once you have the requirements file, you can just use that to install all the dependencies. So that would be pip install -r and the requirements.txt. So let's freeze our dependencies into a requirements.txt file. How we do that? Pip freeze greater than requirements.txt. If you go to the folder, the root folder where you created the virtual environment, you should see a requirements.txt file, and if you look into it, you will see all the dependencies for this particular environment. We have the the requests library 2.18.4. So here we have the requirements.txt. So if you are giving this application to anyone else, or you're just using it to deploy somewhere, you have your requirements file, and this is what gets as a prerequisite. Everything in the requirements.txt gets installed, and then you deploy your application. Like even in Azure Web Apps or anywhere, if you deploy a Python app, you always need this requirements.txt. So this is all about it. We have created the virtual environment, we have fired the application, installed dependencies, we have created our requirements.txt file. So let's just try to use this requirements.txt, how you use it. So if I want to install this particular library, and then I can just put that in our requirements file and then install it through pip. So pip install -r requirements.txt. That's the command for that. This will install everything that is in the requirements.txt file. If any of the library already is installed, it will just skip that. It will say already exists. So let's do that. So it says already satisfied, already satisfied. So we have installed the Google Auth version that we wanted. I mean, this was just to test how you can use the requirements.txt in your virtual environment. So if someone gives you the requirements.txt, you can just install all of them at one go. If I run it again, it says everything exists and already satisfied for all of them. So that's it. Now we just need to deactivate our virtual environment. And how you do that is you go to the scripts folder inside your main virtual environment folder. So how you do that is dot my demo nvnve scripts and then deactivate. It will deactivate your virtual environment. Done. You are out of your virtual environment. So that's all from today's video. I mean, this was a not so long, but yeah, it was quite long session, and we have completed our demo of virtual environment and why you need it and all the reasons why you should start using it whenever you're working with Python. So catch you all guys in next video. Please keep supporting, and this is my channel. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe.